Hello, everybody. I'm Glenn Solomon with GGV Capital, and very excited to welcome you to the ICON Cyber Day panel with CISOs. Many of you were expecting to see my colleague, Oren Younger, but I'm the older, less smart, and less attractive version from GGV, and unfortunately, Oren has a personal issue which has him detained, but he wanted me to channel my thank yous to each of you on the panel. We have a great panel here today, and we have 25 minutes to talk to them from the perspective of they are CISOs and they're also active angel investors. And so what I wanted to start with is to ask each of the panelists to introduce themselves so you folks listening in have a sense for context. Niall, let me start with you. Can you give a quick intro?
Sure. Hello, my name is Niall Brown. I'm the CISO of Palo Alto Networks, where I'm responsible for information security. I've worked in cloud security for about 16 years, been an angel investor for the past 8 years.
Great. Thanks so much, Niall. Rinky, can I ask you to go next?
Yep. Hi, I'm Rinky Sethi. I am currently the Chief Information Security Officer at Rubrik, a cloud data management company and a hot tech startup here in the Bay Area. I've been in cybersecurity for the last 20 years and worked at eBay, Intuit, Palo Alto Networks, and Walmart, and various different companies. And I've been an angel investor for the last year now.
Great. Thanks so much. Jeff, let me ask you to introduce yourself.
Absolutely. Hi, I'm Jeff Trudeau. I am the CISO at Chime, a fintech largest challenger bank. I was formerly with Credit Karma, another fintech company, and I've also been an advisor and investor for several years.
Great. Okay. So I should say that each of you is part of the SVCI, the Silicon Valley CISO Investment Group, where my colleague Oren is also involved. As he's a former CISO. And so I know you guys have been very active outside of and now in the SVCI group as well. And so I thought I would start, Rinky, by asking you, it sounds like you've been doing plenty of investing and helping companies in other ways. Can you tell us a little bit about what it's like, how your day job differs from being an investor, and what it's like when things are going well, when you're angel investing and advising companies?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess the first part of the question, my day job, one of the things I'm really passionate about is obviously protecting Rubrik and making sure we've got the right technologies. And it's really fun to go look at new startups that are emerging, new innovation, and how companies are thinking about protecting security, protecting companies in different ways. And I think I've served both as an advisor and I'm an investor for several companies. And I think the main difference that I see is when you're advising, it might be because you're helping a company go to market, or there's some expertise that you're bringing. And in either case, whether it's advising or investing, I think you've really got to have confidence that that company has a good team of people, that they're going to do really well, their go-to-market strategy is strong. When you're investing, you're putting your own money into a company. So that's changes kind of the paradigm a little bit, and it is quite a bit of work. But I think the way that I think about it, it's a hobby and something I really enjoy doing, and working with these startups and seeing them grow, and hope that they do really well and make us all money in the future. But it does take a lot of time, and it's but obviously I'm able to bring a lot of expertise from what I'm currently doing at work and help them out as a customer as well.
So speaking of that expertise, I want to pick up on that thread, Jeff, and ask you, obviously there's a lot of folks who are either founders themselves listening in, or plan to be founders in the future. And they'll have a lot of different options of people to go talk to about being, angels in their companies. What do you think makes for, why does a CISO like yourself, why is that a good decision for an entrepreneur to bring on a CISO or group of CISOs to be angel investors?
Well, really, I think it's the expertise that we bring, this is what we do all day long, is we understand what our needs are, and we understand the solutions that are out there and the solutions that we wish existed. So our ability to identify where the real need is, and a lot of times when we talk to companies, they'll have an idea for a solution, and we'll be able to kind of channel that towards the problem a little better and help align with where the real pain point is for the CISOs and for the organizations, so that we can really help them to solve a real problem and add a lot more value.
In your experience so far, like when you've invested, what's been a good MO for you with the founding team? Like, do you meet regularly, or do you take calls when there's a problem or a question that arises, or how have you seen like the flow back and forth work best?
So I think there's several avenues. I think some CISOs who are investors will get directly involved with a company that they're very passionate about. Others will be available just on a Slack channel. If the vendor has questions, we're there to provide feedback from a lot of different viewpoints. There's also specific requests. Hey, can you review this board presentation, or review this go-to-market presentation, or just do a demo of the latest version of the product and give us feedback?
Great. Okay. That makes sense. Let's shift gears a little bit. And Niall, let me ask you, from the reverse side of this, there's no shortage of cybersecurity startups out there. And many are doing interesting things run by really smart people. How do you decide personally, and from what you've seen from other CISOs, like how do CISOs get interested, or what makes for an attractive opportunity, and how do you try to separate all those, the wheat from the chaff, if you will, because there's so many opportunities out there?
Yeah, no, great question. I mean, the issue generally is, if you're buying a product into your company, you're generally looking at it as a very narrow field. In other words, I've got a very specific problem in my very specific company itself, and will that fix the very specific solution itself? And will it fix the solution for the first 1, 2, 3 years, and then I'll get rid of that product, and then I'll put in another product. So for the most part, when you're looking at it as a CSO, buying a product to use in your company, it's a very, very narrow field itself. And then when you're looking basically at a company to say, do I want to put my hard-earned money into this company itself? It's a much wider field. Now you're looking at basically at the product, and you're saying, well, my company, would we use it? Then would all the other companies in this category use it itself? Would they use it in financial services? Would they use it in healthcare? Would it translate internationally across the board? Does it tie into key categories from there? You're also meeting with the team, and it's all about the team and the people, because even if it's the best idea in the world and it's the best category, and it could be a huge success, if the person who's running it itself is not the person who can execute on that, that idea is going to kind of die in the vine. So you spend a lot of time working with basically the CEO, like, do they have the leadership qualities? Do they get it? Can they listen to feedback from there? Do they have a great number two? Oftentimes somebody will be business centric, somebody will be technical centric. So it really is, can they take that idea? Can they run with it itself? Is it such a wide field that they can run from there? And then it's really looking at that one is and then after that, then you decide, like, will I put my money where my mouth is? Because at the end of the day, basically, anybody can be an advisor, because for most of the time, when you're an advisor, you're a consultant. If you want to be an owner, i.e. when you put your money down, it's a much higher category of just buying a product or advising a product. Now, basically, you're putting your money down, and you're not going to get it out for 6 or 7 years.
Yeah, and I like. I'm intrigued by the comment you've made about the people, because I think, many out there would assume that, given your guys' roles as chief security officers at companies, that you take a very sort of product and technology centric orientation when you're looking at a new opportunity. But you've mentioned how important people are, and Rinky, I was wondering if I could ask you about that as well. If you think about companies that have done well, like security companies that have brought products into your company and done well with them, how important, particularly when they're early stage, are the people? And what do you look for in a group of founders to get excited about, both investing and potentially betting on a product?
Yeah, I mean, I think I could probably speak for Niall and Jeff here too when I say that we're approached by companies all the time, and market saturated, and you see vendors solving a lot of similar problems, a lot of solutions that look the same, and we probably say no to advising and investment opportunities more than we say yes, right? So the team is, I think, the most important thing. When I look at a team, I've turned down opportunities to advise, invest, or even partner or become a customer of a vendor because the team comes, they present, they're really arrogant about their solution. They're not open to feedback or incorporating any kind of feedback into their product, or sometimes their product, the way they're pitching the product doesn't make sense, and you give them that feedback and they feel it's the right way to go. So I think the team is the most important thing. And when I think about if the team is open to feedback, if they're innovative, if they have a dynamic just amongst themselves where you can tell that they really enjoy working with each other and enjoy what they're doing, I think that's what's going to carry them forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's a great insight. And your screening and filtering sounds a lot like ours at GGV. And I was wondering, maybe Jeff, I could direct this at you. Venture capital firms like mine, like GGV Capital, we bring a certain set of the way we look at opportunities and the way we try to execute on new investments. Kind of has a certain flow to it, and we once we invest in a company, we try to help, and we have an army of folks that we have on staff who help with things like talent and recruiting and business development and new customer development and marketing, these kinds of things. How do you differentiate between like what a CISO can do as an investor in a company versus what like VC firms can do? And why should an entrepreneur think about bringing in CISOs to complement like a typical round led by a VC?
So I think if speaking about SVCI, which is a group of 50 or 60 Silicon Valley, Bay Area CISOs, what we bring in addition to what a VC can do is just an incredible amount of credibility and validation. If the CISO community chooses to invest in a product, that is really saying that those founders and that vision and that product have been vetted and it's highly believed in by the customers of that product and potential customers of the product. So it really goes a long ways towards giving them the credibility when they're out, selling and growing the company.
Having had the good fortune at GGV to work with SVCI now closely on a couple of companies, we see it. Maybe talk a little bit about like it's 50 to 60 CISOs, but and there's a big stamp of approval when you guys get involved because you say no to a lot of things, many more things than you say yes to. But once you're involved, what does that look like, and how does a CEO get the most out of a group like SVCI versus maybe just having them on the cap table?
Sure, and yeah, I would say it's less than it's just a couple of percent of the companies that we look at that we actually decide to invest in. So we set a very high bar, and once we have engaged with the company and invested in them, we have a whole process of kickoffs and team meetings, and we provide people who are more dedicated to assisting and people that have different strengths. Some CISOs might have a lot more ability to help them on the go-to-market. Others might be able to help them with improving their technology and the problem fit. So we get involved in a lot of different ways to help, as well as just working with the leadership team and coaching and advising them on how to make the company grow, because we're all very invested in that success.
Cool. How about, you guys mentioned that you see a lot. You have a lot of people coming to you. So is sourcing something you guys focus on at all? You know, in a VC firm, we think a lot about how do we make sure we maximize source, you know, we source all the best opportunities. So if we don't see something, of course, we can't invest in it. So we want to see everything. How do you guys think about sourcing, Niall? Maybe let me ask you that. Do you do anything proactively to try to make sure you're seeing, you know, a whole bunch of new opportunities, or does it just naturally come to you?
I think mainly basically for the vast majority of the time it's the latter. So if you think about it, you know, if you're doing CISO and you're protecting the company, you're focused on protecting that data, that's the day job itself, and that's the core focus, and that's where the vast majority of your time needs to be. And as you very well know, that from investing itself, sourcing can take up a huge amount of time. You can look at 100 companies before you pick that one company that you want to invest in. So certainly in my case, the vast majority of it has been through SVCI or other investment companies, or in some cases I'll look at a product in a company and I look at internally, will we leverage this product? And I'll say, yeah, if it's such a good fit for our company and it meets the other categories and the others basically leadership qualities, then I'd look at basically, will I invest in that? And then I'll generally ping basically one of the investment vehicles for them to take a look at that as well. But I would say for the most part, basically, if you're an active CISO itself, you can't do two things. You can't be a CISO and you can't source as well from the most part. So someone's got to do the funnel, and then when you get the funnel, you can provide kind of that value add from there.
Got it. Okay. Well, what about you know, the due diligence process? Because it sounds like, you know, you may have 100 opportunities and maybe only invest in one or two. So I'm curious, like, what the process looks like from your side, and what recommendations you'd give to an entrepreneur to maximize their probability of getting through, running that gauntlet, and becoming, you know, like, so that they make it real. Is it making it really easy? Is it having all the materials available? Is it anticipating some of the questions? Rinky, let me ask you that. What's the due diligence process like? And what recommendations do you give? Like, when you think about someone who did it really well from the entrepreneur side, what did they do well, and what does that suggest for others to think about?
Yeah, I would say on the due diligence side, and you know, this is where partnering with a VC works well, like what we're doing with SVCI, but going and checking on whether, first of all, do you want to do the investment on your own or direct it through a fund vehicle? And there's a thorough vetting process, and there's a lot of things that you need to look into when you're going to decide, yes, this is the one we're going to go with. But looking at the founding team and compositions and strengths, looking at the overall business model, is the business model attractive? And some of these things you would have done during the sourcing, but it's going back and rechecking those things. Mm-hmm. And I think entrepreneurs that have done that well, they've looked at every single area of that startup. You know, what is the customer acquisition cost, and just every detail that you can imagine. And there's pretty robust playbooks on this, if you will, that kind of guide you through that due diligence process.
Okay. Jeff, anything you'd add on this point, like what you've seen from entrepreneurs who've gone through the process and done it well?
Yeah, I think one important thing is to get a CISO mentor, somebody to help you go through the process, because it is a unique process, and I think you know, knowing how to be prepared for it, knowing what the questions are going to be beforehand, can really help.
Okay, that's a great point. Okay, we've got a question that's come in from the listeners, and the question is around relationships. Like, what does the relationship look like post deal that works really well? So you guys talked about, Jeff, you talked a little bit about you know, how you can help, but any tips for like an entrepreneur who's working with a CISO or group of CISOs once they come in the door and invest, to get the most out of them? Niall, maybe you want to take that?
Sure. So I mean, I'd categorize this as always basically kind of, you know, money and time. So you put in your money, done. You put in your hard-earned money. You're willing to put in your time, but it's a finite amount of time from there. So it's really when you're working with the entrepreneur, for the entrepreneur to look at the CISO, for this person CISO, what do I need to get off them? Is it a case basically, as Rinky points out, is it a case of the go-to-market strategy? Is it a case basically they want help basically refining their tools and technology from that end? Is it a case that they want to get different types of customer base there? So I would say for most entrepreneurs, it's looking at the CISO and having the discipline to look at it and say, they've given their money. Now for their time, they have a finite amount of time. What explicitly do I want to get from this CISO as opposed from another CISO, as opposed from a CTO, as opposed from a VC perspective? And I think basically the entrepreneurs that do that well, do that very, very well from there. And generally I've seen basically for anybody who's in investees or CISO or CTO in a company, they're more than willing to help out basically the entrepreneurs that they invested in. But it should be obviously the quid pro quo. There's no point coming with 20 issues from there. Come up 1 or 2 key issues, spend an hour on it, and then close it. And it's the likes of saying, it's the discipline. Is imagine if someone's doing going back to the earlier question, if somebody's doing basic kind of they want to basically get investment. It's all about like what's their pitch, like what's their elevator pitch to get the investment in the first place, and then what's their pitch when they have the CISO signed up. What explicitly do they want to get out of that relationship? And I think those ones that are disciplined and tight, they're the ones that they get the most value from their advisory and their investment groups.
Okay, another question that's come in is how to rise above the noise, right? There's so many opportunities. You guys have alluded to the fact that you see a ton in this space. Is there advice you give to rise above the noise? Rinky, maybe ask you that one.
That's a tough one, but I think one that tends to work, at least for me as a CISO, just to get, even if, and I'm assuming you're talking about how do they get in front of CISOs and that kind of thing.
I think the question is, yeah, like, you know, if we're one of 100, how do we make sure that people are paying attention to us? Yeah.
Yeah, I think the network really helps. And I've told other, companies that I'm advising, like if there's another CISO that reaches out to me, or there's somebody that they know at my company, for example, and that person comes to me and says, hey, would you be willing to talk to these guys? That's generally going to work. And that'll put them to the top of the list. Just because it's by network, and there's a referral there. I think that's the best way. So I think leveraging the CISO community, and that's kind of the value that we provide as advisors or as investors, that we can reach out to other CISOs and get things in front of them as a company. If they have a compelling solution to a strategic problem that a company's facing. So I would say that's the number one way to get get above all the noise, if you will.
Okay. And Jeff, one other question came in around like conflict of interest. Is that something you should worry about as a founder, or do you guys think about it as CISOs? Like if you invest, is it then hard for you to bring that technology into your own company, or how does that tend to work?
I don't think it's something that they need to worry about, but it is something that the CISO needs to focus on. So it's important for a CISO that invests in a company to make clear to their compliance officer that there's a technology that may make sense for the company, but that we're conflicted as an investor in that company, and that assign a separate group, have the security team report up to the compliance officer instead of the CISO on the decision on that to remove the impression of any sort of conflict of interest.
Makes sense. Okay, we're going to go into the speed round now. We're almost out of time. So I'm going to ask each of you the same question, putting you on the hot seat. What's one area of cybersecurity that really excites you today as an angel investor? And I'm sure that also coincides with as a potential buyer of technology over time. Niall, let me start with you.
Yeah, I think for the most part, without a doubt, it's the cloud itself. So the cloud has been around for 10, 12 years at this point. Certainly it's only in the last 2 years that people have really embraced it and are moving the key workloads into the cloud. So if you're looking at any of security vendors out there, you need to make sure basically that there's a new industry, a new area they're focusing on. I think cloud is certainly the area whereby most organizations are focusing on. So most of my picks and investments are in relation to how do I solve the issue of security and privacy in the cloud. Okay.
Rinky, you got 15 seconds.
Yeah, I would definitely what Niall said. I think companies that are SaaS and cloud only, there's a lot of new innovation there. I'm excited about that. And the second is I'm seeing more and more security practitioners turning into entrepreneurs and starting their own companies. And I love that as well.
Okay, cool. Jeff.
I'll concur with those, as well as I will say moving the perimeter towards identity and towards data versus an actual perimeter, which has kind of gone away.
Okay, cool. Guys, thank you very much for your time. This has been super interesting for me, and I think for the audience as well. Hope you, the many entrepreneurs out there listening in are now more excited than ever to bring CISOs into their companies. And Niall, Rinky, and Jeff are some of the very best. So thank you guys, really appreciate it. And I think we're on to the next panel at ICON.
Thanks.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you all.
Okay.